These astrocartography maps are so unique and special because they show us where certain energies are in the world for us, but they also show us where storylines are playing out for us. The US is entering a wild time, like in a week from now. It starts July 7th. We've only had this transit 3 other times in history. The first time was the American Revolutionary War, when the US was founded. The second time was the US Civil War. And the third time was when the US involved itself into World War II.
Welcome to Holistic Wisdom Live. Today I have an absolutely fascinating, fabulous episode. We're going to talk about astrocartography and what I like to call the cosmic GPS with the one and only Helena Woods. I'm so fascinated by what she does. By the way, thank you so much for being here and for accepting my invitation.
Of course, I'm honored to be on your show and to be speaking with you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to give people a preface of like why I'm interviewing you and why I think it's so important. So last year, well, actually, let's go back to 2020 or 2019. I had an inkling that we need to look for a place that is outside of where we live. And I began a search of like where that place would be. Of course, we didn't move. Then COVID happened and all these things unfolded. And then last year, I live in Florida, Tampa, Florida. We had a big hurricane. Thankfully, it was not a direct hit, but we were without power for 6 days. And I remember laying in my bedroom. I didn't sleep the whole night. The wind was pounding at 120 miles an hour. And I had this inner voice in me saying, downsize, minimize your life, and look into Portugal again. You need to revisit the idea of Portugal, which came to me in 2019. And then somebody, the next morning, I wake up, I didn't sleep, and your video was shared. And you talked about the hurricane and the line. Again, I'm not an astrologer, but I'm fascinated with astrology, and I'm fascinated with the work that you do. And I just thought that I started following you, and I thought the work that you share is just so fabulous. And I think people are ready for more information, more knowledge, because there is a massive awakening that's happening collectively. So I thought this is an amazing opportunity for people that are not sure, like, should I stay? Should I go? What does the world look like in the next couple of years? Like, what are the best options for me? And this is why I'm calling this the cosmic GPS, because the stars, I feel, have a lot to say. And based on our own, what I understand, natal chart and our own unique blueprint in the sky and our expression in the earth is very much connected. And your success and health and abundance and joy and love and meeting your partner all plays into it. And location makes a difference. So I
Mm.
thought, there's no one else better than you that would be able to talk about it. So welcome, and please share
Oh.
about how long you've been doing it, what you're doing.
Yeah. So I specialize in locational astrology, which is all about the energies and stories of locations in the world. And just like how we have a birth chart that shows our natal promise of our entire life and what will be activated and the themes, stories, lessons that will play out over our lifetimes, we also have these really special, unique maps that are based on where we were born. And they're called astrocartography maps. And these astrocartography maps are so unique and special because they show us where certain energies are in the world for us, but they also show us where storylines are playing out for us. So I like to think of it as you have a natal promise of your life that will play out at some point in certain ways, and your map shows the locations where those places unlock storylines and potentials within your natal promise. So I like to think of it as Where are your people in the world? Where are your most important contacts and connections? Where are those people coming from consistently? Where do you have a lot of career success and momentum? Where is that happening in the world? Or what about that feeling of home, belonging, comfort with the land and the connection and the energies to a country? Where are those lines happening? And then you also have lines that have to do with your individuality and your independent self and exploring who you are. So you have these locations in the world that represent very different things. And what I do is I help people get to their best places in the world for what they're looking for. But also, I like to think of it as right place, right time. It's helping people, guiding people to places that will support them in the exact timing where that story is being unlocked for them. So I use a combination of different techniques, timing techniques in astrology, as well as astrocartography and locational astrology techniques. But what I've gotten really fascinated about in the last year and a half has been the world and what parts of the world are getting activated for everyone on a collective
Mhm.
level. And so one of the things that how you found me was the hurricanes in Florida. And that was really crazy because that was an eclipse. And eclipses are wild card events where doors open and doors close really suddenly. They're accelerations of fate, is how I've once heard eclipses described as, where it's like they kind of bring you this sense of momentum. Either something's opening for you really quickly, a new path is opening up for you, or it's closing really quickly. And so eclipses are kind of like almost like metaphorical portals where that timeline is like opening. And what was happening was that eclipse was aspecting the United States Neptune in the chart very closely within a degree, or within a couple degrees. And
Mhm.
that eclipse was affecting the Neptune line that the US has in the country. And that Neptune line was going right through Florida, the western coast of Florida. And then it was going right up through the Carolinas, Asheville, Georgia, up through that western pocket of the Carolinas. So when I saw that, I made a reel on it because I was like, this is crazy. It activated that line that the US always has in its birth chart, but the timing unlocked that potential for it. So now I'm really fascinated about world collective astrology and how these parts of the world kind of awaken and get very energized, and things are happening in certain parts of the world when timing affects them.
Mm, that makes so much sense because I felt, I remember when I saw your video right before that it was like a universal portal that opened up and said you got to clean your life, simplify it, change things as fast as you can because something else is coming in 2025 that's going to be even bigger and more massive. And that's my question for you. Do you feel like this line is going to be more and more active?
Yeah, there's going to be another eclipse in September this year, and that line is getting activated again. And also, just in general, the US is entering a wild time, like in a week from now. It starts July 7th, and this transit happens every 84 years, roughly. So we get this transit, which is called Uranus and Gemini, and it's essentially a time when a country, specifically the US, is going through a lot of change and just a lot of changes, and especially it's targeting aviation, the travel industry, transportation, but also technology, and also kind of the conflict between people. Gemini is all about dual sides or two different perspectives, and with Uranus there's just a lot of chaotic energy amongst ideas and thoughts. And so that's all beginning a week from now. And we're going to be in this cycle for about 7 to 8 years. It'll finally wrap up in 2033. But the places where this is really being affected is where the Uranus line is happening in the US, and that's going through the East Coast. So I'm looking at like the eastern states, Florida, the Carolinas, and then going up Tennessee, like all of these places are going to be affected by that Uranus return, which is really big.
And like, for example, if you can give us examples, what does it mean when the Uranus is impacting the lines? Like, what would be some of the things that are going to be showing up?
Yeah, so Uranus represents change and it affects Gemini things. So, industries that involve travel, transportation, technology changes. We're going to see AI just go through the roof. We're going to see technology change how we communicate with each other on social media. That's going to change in a lot of ways. How we use technology to communicate and connect with each other, that's going to change. Um, but it's typically, to put it bluntly, we've only had this transit three other times in history. The first time was the American Revolutionary War when the US was founded. The second time was the US Civil War. And the third time was when the US involved itself into World War II. So, this, based on the information and the data that we have from the last times this has happened, the US can be involved in conflict or a civil war, civil conflict time. It can be an external conflict as well with another country, but it's really being activated on the East Coast for the country specifically when the Uranus return is exact. And so I just think these are going to be
Mhm.
times where the energy feels really ungrounding and like there's a
Mhm.
lot of change and a lot happening really fast. And I think more than ever, we should use this time to really get grounded and anchored through our different practices, nervous system regulation work, connecting with the tools that we have to help us stay centered, because there is going to be so much change happening in the country starting this week.
Mm. And aviation, can you talk a little bit how I'm asking my son is a pilot, like how is aviation impacted, you're saying starting next week?
Yeah. Well, Gemini rules aviation, planes, transportation of any kind. Like, how do we get places, cars, all of that. So, with Uranus in Gemini, it's about technological advancements and
Mm.
how the industry advances through technology with transportation. So, I just think planes could go a lot faster.
Mhm.
We might have huge advancements in technology with cars and how we get around places. And I just think a lot of things are going to be automated too. I think AI is just going to be huge. Also, because Pluto's in Aquarius, there's this massive advancement of all things tech. And so I think there are very good things that have to come with Uranus and Gemini too. I just think the advancement of the travel industry is going to be really exciting to pay attention to, and like how
Mm.
these engines, these machines, how they change in a good way.
Okay, fascinating. It also makes me think about, actually, we're getting ready to do an episode on it on Palantir and Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, which we will be putting out an episode on Palantir. But have you heard of Palantir?
No, no.
Oh, okay. It's an AI system, driven system that is all about total surveillance. You should look into that. And yeah, we're getting ready to release it. It's basically linked to connecting all of the systems together, the medical, the banking, everything that you ever do it's already, you're being watched already, but all these systems are going to be basically revealing your behavioral patterns. And many of the decisions that are going to be made are no longer going to be made by the humans. It's going to be made by the AI. And Palantir is at the forefront. It's actually aligned with CIA. It was launched, I think, 2003 after 9/11.
Wow.
So this is, it's like the looking glass, the term of it comes from Lord of the Rings, the looking glass. It was called Palantir. So I thought it's interesting that they took that into this technology. But this is, I think, one of the technologies under the pretense of security, safety, that is going to
Mm.
globally bring everyone into one system, which I don't know if you know, like I have a family member who lives in Denmark, and my son was sharing with me when he went there during COVID, like they wanted you to pull up your status of, if you got the jab or you didn't get the jab. But
Oh, wow.
basically, what happened was he was like, why do your medical records from birth show up when you were at a restaurant? So it's linked to that already. I think they've already put it out in Denmark. Like if you're driving on a highway you actually will get a ticket. And I don't know some of the states in the US that are already doing it, but based on your speed, at the moment you entered an exit and you exited through an exit, the speed that it took to go through that distance, it knows if you were speeding it and you get the ticket at home.
Oh
Did you
my
know that?
God. That's insane.
That's insane.
And that's absolutely what I think will be coming. I mean, all of that, like systems that monitor us. I mean,
Yes.
that's so Pluto and Aquarius. I keep thinking with Pluto and Aquarius, it's a lot of drone warfare, like things in the air, like cyber
Hmm.
drones and things like that. AI drones using AI that are in the air, but then also the other thing I think of cyberpunk. Cyberpunk, that kind of aesthetic, that kind of lifestyle of like in some ways it's like high tech but low life. Like there's a lack of
Hmm.
autonomy in like your decisions and your what you
Yeah.
want to do.
Yeah. It's a
It's
control
very,
system.
yeah, it's complete control and it's very, very concerning.
So that's my question then. Okay, we know it's coming. We know it's already happening,
Yeah.
right? It's a matter of like how quickly they can connect all of the systems, all of the governments, who's going to be on board, who's not going to be on board. But like, I'm curious, are there countries that will keep their sovereignty and not necessarily connect to the system? Because I'm also seeing like we're drifting away from cash, right? We're drifting towards the crypto world and that whole system of
Hmm.
money. Like if you go to post office now, I don't know if you've been lately, but like at our post offices, you can no longer pay with cash. You have to pay with credit
Hmm.
card or debit card. So I'm like, okay, it's slowly happening.
Yeah.
So are there places in the world where perhaps that might not be taking place? What do you see? Or have you looked?
Well, usually when I think of like kind of rebellion or going against what everyone's doing, I think of Uranus, which is the planet of rebellion and like out with what everyone's doing and follow your own path. That transit of Uranus for the next 3 years, it's going through the West Coast. So it's going through Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. It's going through the west coast of the
Mm,
US for the next 3 years. I don't know if that would align with those states or I don't really know, but that Uranus line is going through those areas. Places where I think there will be more control is where Saturn and Neptune are moving through. And that's going through the Midwest and then moving east. So it's right now it's going through Chicago and going down through New Orleans, and then it's going to slowly move its way east over the next several years through like to
like the states like New
Tennessee.
York.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to
Uh-huh.
start making its way that way. And then those lines are also going through Paris, France directly right now. And it's going through France, and then it's going to start making its way east toward Italy, Netherlands, Belgium,
Mm,
Austria, Germany. Those lines of restriction, constriction, it's also crackdowns on immigration and like crackdowns on borders. I think immigration is going to be a lot harder. Like if you wanted to move abroad, I think 2 years from now it might be a bit harder, which is why I recommend, if you're thinking about
mhm.
getting another passport, really try to do it now. Um, but that energy is moving toward Eastern Europe for the next 3 years. So, and we're going to see that really come about storylines with that September this year and then again in February of 26.
Interesting. I also have a theory that all this social unrest that is happening globally is actually a huge illusion
Mm,
for this totalitarian system to take place under the pretense of keeping everyone safe. We're going to check who is who.
yeah.
But is that what you feel also
I
astrologically?
I definitely think so. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's Pluto and Aquarius is like
Hmm.
total control of the people. And it's about communities. And it's the opposite of Leo. And Leo is kind of the opposite of this. And Leo is, you doing your thing, shining in your authenticity, following your own, thing. Aquarius is about, okay, what will benefit the group? What benefits the communities, the people as a whole? And with that, Pluto represents power, abuse of power, corruption, and control. Every time we have Pluto go through a zodiac sign, it brings about the darkness, the underbelly of what that sign represents. And so, for instance, Pluto in Scorpio or Pluto in Libra, we saw a lot of, serial killers toward women and abuse toward women when Pluto was in Libra, which is, violence in relationships. Pluto in Scorpio, there was a lot of kind of underground, also, the AIDS pandemic was Pluto in Scorpio.
Mm.
Pluto and Sag was terrorism, extreme religion, and like what you believe and like your beliefs and your faith. There was the dark abuse of power within religion was Pluto and Sag. That was 9/11 and like the terrorism, years. And then we had Pluto and Capricorn, which was the abuse of power within real estate industries, money,
Mm.
the government structures of how government and money, currency, how and real estate. That was that the minute that Pluto entered Capricorn was when the real estate market crashed in
Gosh.
2008. So that was the kickstart of Pluto in Capricorn. And then just recently, at the beginning of this year, Pluto in Aquarius.
And
And
how
Pluto,
long does it last?
this is about 20 years. Yeah. And
Oh
this
my
is
gosh.
all about Aquarius as technology, the abuse and corruption of how we use technology and how we control the masses of people through the systems on our tech, our phones, all of it. So this is the next, and each Pluto and it's a generational thing. Pluto represents a generational time of when things are being exposed, truth is being exposed about something dark that's going on. And so all these years we've had specific themes come up, and now this one it just started this year. So it's showing us, how do we use technology and how does that
Mm.
control people?
Yeah. So, yeah, for people, this is time to buckle up and also
Yeah.
look into the potential sovereign places where you can still exercise
Yeah. Yeah.
your
You're
highest
into
potential individuality,
Yeah.
right?
And I do wonder, a lot of my clients are moving to South America, like
Mm.
Uruguay. A lot of people are moving to Chile, a lot of places in South America. I don't know. I haven't looked at astrologically if we're getting a lot of that kind of energy there, but those are places I think might be more helpful. I don't know too much on the research of what, honestly, astrology just shows the cycles of things. And so when Pluto entered Aquarius at the beginning of this year, what came about in the news? What countries started, upholding certain boundaries or certain rules and regulations? We already got kind of a foreshadowing of where this is going to get stronger and where this is going to get bigger.
You
And
know what I think
so,
was the foreshadowing? Actually, sorry to
yeah, no, no, no.
interject. COVID was because you could see where the total grip took place.
Yeah.
Um, and this is why I'm not sure about South America, because places
Hmm.
like where my husband is from Portugal, or not Portugal, from Peru, they were very
Were they?
horrible. It was horrible
Oh,
there. So that's why
wow.
I'm questioning, people
Yeah.
moving there because of
Yeah.
what happened in the last 5 years.
Well, France was really bad too. I
Very
mean,
bad.
I was living in France and I couldn't leave my house for more than an hour's walk every day, and I had to stay within a certain distance of my home. And I remember the police stopped me multiple times and gave me tickets because I went out into
So
the
that's
forest. I went out into the forest. I was alone in nature. And yeah,
Florida
no.
was great, but again, it depended where in Florida. Like we in Tampa, Central Florida was so much better than Miami because Miami had the
Mm,
total lockdown. And then
mm,
over time, they started loosening up. We were actually in a totally different position. And that's why I'm like, okay, is it really going to be that bad? But I think it's going to be more about the hurricane thing too.
yeah. I think this September is big on hurricanes for that area again because it's coming up again in the chart. I will say though, places that I'm kind of telling people to go to if they're looking to move
Yeah.
abroad that are safer and won't be going through as, challenges, difficulties are Spain and Portugal.
Hmm.
Um, because we don't have those difficult lines that are going through France and then going through Eastern Europe, moving forward to Italy and Germany. They're not going to be in that area at all. So it looks more grounded in Portugal, Spain, and then Ireland as well. That's not going to be going through Ireland either. So
Interesting.
those are the places I'm really looking at for places just to help support people in moving.
Okay. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about moving from France to those places yourself?
No, my astrocartography is not
That's
as
good.
nice in those areas. I tend to have
Ah,
difficulties in Portugal every time I go there, and it's reflected in my map, you
so
know? And so
interesting.
this is where when we're talking about like your individual maps, it shows you the energies of a place. And so when you look at your map and you see these crisscrossing lines in different places, that's showing you your story there. So, is it a more advantageous and supportive place for your
Mhm.
thriving? Or is it a place that feels like there's some, tenderness or restrictions? Or is it harder to get through challenges? Because I always say you can't avoid your timing, you can't avoid your life. But where you live matters because if you put yourself in a location or an environment that really supports you astrologically and just your values, you'll be able to ride through challenges in a much easier way. Whereas I think of it like as, if I were living, let's just say a Mars line, and I saw Mars is generally a more challenging line for someone to live on their astrocartography map. And I saw in my horizon, I got some hard transits coming up. I wouldn't want to live on a difficult astrocartography line while I'm going through that transit. I would
Yeah.
rather put myself in a place where there's more ease, flow,
Yes.
fun, pleasure,
Mhm.
enjoying life, so that yes, I might still, I'm still going to be going through that timing. I'm still going to be going through that difficult transit, but at least I can ride through that with more ease than challenge. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
how
less
I like.
obstacles. Mm.
Exactly. And I'm a big believer that your inner voice and your intuition is a reflection of your map. So when you feel called to go somewhere in the world, it's because your soul needs that story or that energy that's presented there for you. Your soul is feeling that call to get that energy of that place, even if it's just for a short trip. And also, when you have timing, activate your map. So, like, you go to that place at a time when a line is swooping through and moving through that area, it's almost like an awakening. It
Mm.
brings about an energy. And so you can go back home, but there was some inspiration or an idea or something that you got while you were there that you can then continue on the journey with when you get back home. So that's how I like to use astrocartography as well. Um, but yeah, it's powerful because your inner voice, your intuition is being reflected in the map, and where you live matters. All of this matters. I see a lot of people say things like, "Wherever I am, there is home," or wherever, if I can connect with my inner love or my inner journey, my self-care, anywhere can be home. And I disagree because I've done it, I've lived it, I've worked with over 2,500 clients one-on-one. I know what it's like when someone consistently goes through hard challenges. They feel like I feel stuck. I don't love where I live. There's just something about this area that feels like it's limiting me. And it's like, yeah, it's because you're on a difficult line or
Yes.
you have a hard relocation chart that's not advantageous or supportive of what you are seeking in your life. And
Mm.
so if you feel the call to go, it's because you're meant to go. And a lot of people stop themselves or tell themselves, like, oh, but this, and I don't want to leave my home because I have to get rid of my things. It's like, honestly, that's the hardest part. The hardest part is getting rid of your possessions and downsizing and saying goodbye to people, saying goodbye to comfort, what you've known, what you've built a life around. But it's like, once you go, oh my gosh, life just really unfolds for you. And I've experienced this in my own life, living all over the world, traveling all over the world. I travel full time experiencing this. And yeah, it's really powerful location.
Thanks for sharing that. I do have another question, which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about. So let's say your astrocartography shows you one location that's amazing. How important is it to look at your spouse's astrocartography, because what if you can't find, is there ever like where the two people don't have a location together that works? And how do you choose by which location do you go?
I find that often couples are in alignment together.
Mm,
Um, and when it's not, like when there's some difficulty, and let's say your partner gets a job and you've got to move to this location. And maybe for your partner, it's really supportive, but for you, maybe you've got a little bit more challenge there. I like to think of kind of the spiritual holistic view of like, but maybe there's something there for you. Maybe you're supposed to tap into
mm,
this energy. Maybe you're meant to learn something from this. Maybe, and there's always a pro and a con to every line. Even the beautiful lines, there's always a con to a Venus line or a Jupiter line. And Venus and Jupiter, for any of you that know astrology, they're the benefics in astrology. They're the good planets that support you and bring you good things. But there's always a downside to them too. It's the same with the malefics or the difficult planets. There's always a pro to all the challenging planets as well. Mars gives anger and aggression and hustle and fast energy, but it also gives you courage and leadership, and it helps you step into the
mhm,
warrior and the independent, assertive version of you that you tap into when you're on a Mars line. Same with Saturn. I live on traditionally a very difficult line in France, and I've been here the last 7, 8 years. But Saturn has brought me my purpose. It's showed me where I need to mature in my life. Where can I find more discipline in my life? How can I step into the pursuit of purpose in a serious way? So there's always a pro and a con to every line. So first off, I think if you're meant to go somewhere, and even if there's some challenge, you're meant to get something from that. And then two, I do find that couples are often in alignment with each other. I just had a client session the other day of a couple. They had the same lines, or it was like one person had
mm,
one line and then the other person had the same one, but in a different area of life in the same location. This happens so often, even with families. I once had a family session where it was like four people, it was two kids and a mother and father, and everyone was in alignment with this one random location. And then they ended up moving there and they loved it. So it just goes to show that often you're meant to go where you're meant to go. And there's always pluses to every challenging line and vice versa. And make sure that you look at everyone's lines. And I always say start with the parents first. If you're in a family, start with the parents because they really lead, the ship. Kids are so intuitive, they pick up on the energy of the parents. So if you guys are solid and good, you can then, help and support your children. But definitely looking at the astro lines and the astrocartography map for everyone is really helpful.
mm. How often, as you say, this timing can open up, let's say when a person checks their map, how often does that window open up to move based on the charts that you've seen?
For some, it can be a year time frame, like a progression on the map. For others, it can be a 1 month window. Like for specifically, if I want to help someone find the love of their life and meet their partner, we'll want to get them to that love line, that love place when Venus is going through their seventh house of partnership, So sometimes it can be, 1 or 2 months. But usually, like a progression or a long-term transit, that will go through an area sometimes for a year or two. And so that area is kind of lit up for that short, that pocket of time. And so that is a beautiful way to use it. I do often find, though, that you're going to go when you're meant to go, and it comes up in the transits. Like, let's say your ninth house of moving overseas and getting a foreign passport or a visa. Maybe you've got Jupiter, the planet of expansion, going through your ninth house of travel and foreign cultures and all that. That's a year transit. So you're going to be having these themes for one whole year. But let's say the Sun and Venus enter in the ninth house with that Jupiter. Now, all of a sudden, that particular month is really potent. And it doesn't
Mm,
mean that you have to go that month, but I often find that people end up going during that month regardless. So, like,
mm,
even if they don't come to an astrocartographer, life just ends up working that they end up going during that 1 month timeline. It's
interesting.
fascinating.
And does it appear once in a lifetime, would you say that window, or throughout?
Oh, no, throughout your life. Yeah, throughout
Okay.
your life.
So it's
And
not
I
like if you don't take the opportunity now,
No.
you'll never
Oh,
appear
no,
again.
not at
And
all. You get them
okay.
all the time. And, like Jupiter squares, which are particularly really lucky times, you'll get those once every few years. It'll go through the area. And yeah, you don't have to worry about it because it'll recycle again, it'll repeat. So like the nodes, I call them the nodes of fate, but it's times of opportunity and significance and like a door opening. It's kind of similar to the eclipses, the nodes. I find that often when people are like thinking about a country or they'll do some research on like how do I move to Portugal or whatever during that month or two, they're thinking about it, right? And they've got the nodes going right through Portugal when they're thinking and planning and researching. So you don't even have to go there. I find the map is showing you where is calling you, where is your attention in the world. Let's say you meet with someone or someone reaches out to you and they're an amazing contact. If you look up your map, you might find like, oh my gosh, the moon was going through that city that day when that person reached out to me. And the moon goes through all the time. It'll come back all the time. So
Yeah.
it was like there was an opportunity that opened up that day in that part of the world, but I'm not there. But that there was something that came about for me there. That's remote activation, which is using location wherever you live. You don't have to move to these places. Wherever you live, there are things happening in certain places. Maybe you find a vlogger that you love on YouTube and you like for that month you're really into like following this person's YouTube journey in that location in the world. You probably got a Mercury or Venus or something
Mm.
going through that area when you're doing that.
So interesting. And this is why I say it's like your cosmic GPS. Actually, it's your soul. Your soul will speak to you. And it's about paying attention. Like for me, it was 2019. We actually did end up going to Portugal. I remember to see it. And I was like, still, I don't know. And then here we go, 4.5 years later, hurricane comes through, it like clears everything up, opens up the
Yeah,
gate
the
and
eclipse.
says, here you go, you have to revisit this again and
Yeah. And I
think about
wonder
it.
I wonder
Mhm.
what's going to be going on for you in September because we're getting this cycle again. So it's like, are you moving at that time? Are you kind of packing up your stuff? Do you have any plans for September?
Well, we're in the process right now of downsizing. So our goal is in August to move to a small place, get rid of the place that we have. It will be around that time, and then make plans for perhaps visiting the
Yeah.
location. We were thinking about
Yeah.
visiting the location and seeing how did we feel? Like now that
Yeah.
this opportunity opened up, how are we feeling now that we're here? So that's the idea. So you're there you go. It's most likely linked to that September.
Yeah, yeah. September, because it's kind of like these windows of opportunity when we're revisiting something.
Hmm.
And September is a big time of kind of like going back and cleaning up some things. That's kind of what September is about. We're getting a lot of transits where it's like going back and revisiting something that we're not quite finished with just yet. And then once we get into February and March of 26, there's like new chapter, new it's like we're not going back now. Now it's like moving forward. But
Yeah.
this fall is really about like kind of revisiting this theme that we've, maybe been a part of for the last year or two.
Oh, that makes sense. That's so interesting. And do you see that as a collective process or like
Yes.
certain people are
No,
more
it's
into it?
everyone.
It's
E-
everyone. Okay.
Everyone will be going through this, but for some it'll be more obvious and literal in your life, in your
Hmm.
lives if you have placements at these degrees of where this is all happening. But we're all going to be feeling it. It's all about like revisiting something and then moving forward once we get into end of February 26.
And I'm wondering if it's also related to the theme of minimizing. Like last year, my huge message was simplify, minimize, get rid of stuff, just as many things as possible, because it's absolutely holding you back. But I felt it wasn't just a message from me, that it was like a collective theme. And perhaps based on astrology, if that is a collective theme.
Minimizing. Yeah, I mean, Virgo is the sign that's kind of associated with getting minimal. I always think of Saturn, which is about decluttering or eliminating
Uh-huh.
things that aren't helping us. And that's, I mean, that was in Pisces, which is more about compassion, empathy, spirituality, kind of the crackdown on some of this. It's also big on, it was more immigration themes, a lot of. Now that it's in Aries, though, there's definitely like cutting out the fluff. And that
Mhm.
started for us just a couple of months ago. So I would look back over the last few months, like May and June specifically, and what kind of began for you that will continue once we get deeper into 26.
Mhm. Interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, it began October of last year, the hurricane. I'm like, I blame it on the hurricane. It was the
Yeah.
hurricane.
Well, that's probably affecting your personal chart.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're a Cancer rising. Yeah, I'd have to look at your chart, but I'm just thinking of the Pisces Virgo axis in your chart, and because that sounds like it's a personal transit that's
Oh,
affecting
so it could
you.
be personal, not
Yeah.
necessarily collective.
No,
Well,
no.
I'm also thinking collective because I'm seeing a lot of people, like for example, in our area that lost homes. And what I'm finding is
Oh,
the areas that were flooded, which thankfully we didn't, but the areas that flooded, they're rebuilding. And I'm like, why would you rebuild? Because if we have
yeah.
another hurricane, your house is going to be flooded again.
Oh
But
my
people are
gosh.
doing it. And I'm like, that was the whole point, is to show
Yeah.
you not to redo, but people are putting an exorbitant amount of money, like getting all these permits to rebuild everything. And I'm just thinking many are still in the process of rebuilding.
Oh my God. No,
Yes.
like that's Jupiter and Cancer. I mean, Jupiter and Cancer just started. And Jupiter in Cancer is here for the next full year. So until next summer of 26. And Jupiter in Cancer is all about asking this is a collective theme for everyone, but
Hmm.
everyone's going to be asking themselves, what do I need to feel nourished and safe with where I live? That is
Uh-huh.
literally the whole collective question on everyone's mind this year. It's like, what are my needs to feel safe in my home life, to feel nourished? Is it my roommates and do I feel like I'm supported by my community and my neighbors? Do I feel like I like living with my housemates, Or if not, maybe I should move. It's asking like, where do I want to live? Does my country, does my state, does my local town support me and provide for me? This is Jupiter in Cancer, and I've been waiting for this transit for like 2.5 years now. I noticed this transit back in 2022, and I was like, okay, I need to really build my astrocartography business to support that. And this is the year that it's really big is relocation. Where do you want to live? And what are your needs? And how can you get your needs met in a way that's nourishing and actually
Hmm.
works?
Do people ever, for example, book astrocartography to look into the next town over? Like, or is it always like far away move? Like
Oh
in,
no, they do next town over too.
oh,
That's a
really?
special. Oh yeah, that's a special technique called local space, which is a separate technique in locational astrology. So locational astrology is kind of like the big umbrella of the astrology of location, right? But then you got astrocartography, which is like the maps. And then you've got relocation charts, which is showing you how your life changes when you move. So your friends or your money or your career or your children, your relationship to creativity or your partner, right? You see how the areas of your life change. And then you also have local space, which is showing you, what direction should I go in? Should I go to that town? Should I go to that neighborhood? Where should I go to the gym? Should I go work out at that gym or should I work out at that gym? Right? It gives you more detail and precision on
Okay.
like local directional areas to go down.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see how that can be really helpful for
Yeah.
people.
Oh, and I've tested this. I lived in LA for a month and a half last year, and I did like a little experiment where I relocated my local space lines to where I was staying, and I noticed how Certain streets, I always felt off energetically, even though they were beautiful, nice streets with cute shops and boutiques and coffee shops. But it's like, why do I feel so off? And it was like a Pluto line going right through, a local space line going right through. And so it's fascinating how the energy, it's shown on the map how you're feeling.
Another question that I have, for example, some people, and I know me included, like we love, like I love traveling, let's say to Paris. This is just generic example. But I know I'm not supposed to work there. What is it in somebody's chart that you might feel great going on vacation to, but not necessarily have success and business in that area?
Mm.
Does that show up for people?
Oh, yeah, that's the relocation chart. The relocation chart will show you what places you really like, but maybe you're
Hmm.
not meant to work there. Maybe there's some challenging energy in the workhouses for that location, but you've got this beautiful like connection to land, country, culture, and place. And there's also things to look out for in a relocation chart where it's like, oh, what a beautiful travel destination. What a beautiful place to go on vacation, not necessarily to live. So when
Mhm.
I'm looking at someone for like a serious move, a serious relocation, I'm looking at certain parts of the relocation chart just to make sure, like, hey, is the home life supported? Is the family supported? How is money? Is money doing well? Just looking at certain areas of life to make sure that foundation's there.
And once a person makes the move, let's say to their ideal location, how quickly can a person see positive changes take place in their life based on your
Yeah.
experience of working with people?
Yeah. Well, in my own experiences traveling, you feel it immediately. You feel the energy of what that planetary line represents immediately. You can track this on the plane. When you're flying over lines, notice how your energy shifts throughout the flight. Notice how your attention is going to different things. Or maybe suddenly you just notice you're starting to hyperfixate on a topic, or you start to get really into relaxed spirituality. Maybe you're starting to listen to a podcast that has a specific topic in mind, and then that's the line that you're traveling through, right? You can manifest on planes. I've done this, it's incredible. But in terms of like actual like life events really happening, that is a timing thing. So that's the idea of being at the right place, but also there's timing that's activating that story for you in that location at that time. That is something that you have to, I mean, you could go there and travel there during a time, but it's usually something that you kind of settle into the relocation chart.
Mm. Yeah, and then take action, meet people, and so forth.
Yeah.
Things begin to unfold.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in my own life, I travel to places where I have lucky lines, and I go when there's a lucky opportunity. Going through timing wise, it's immediate. I touch down, my plane touches down, and I've got two journalists that want to feature me on news articles within my inbox literally less than 24 hours later. Or my flight lands and a day later a huge podcaster wants me to be on their show. And it's like, what? It's it's insane how this works. And it's crazy because where I live in France, it's a little bit slower for me. Like I
Mhm.
live on a Saturn line, so it's more long-term building the foundations, but it's slow. But when I go to these places and I travel to these locations, it's immediate. It's crazy.
Amazing. So for you, for example, you chose a Saturn line versus like what would make you choose a place versus like instant things like you're describing.
Well, there's also just the practicality, right? I mean,
Okay.
if I could do anything, I mean, and have it all, I have certain places in the world that I'd want to live on, my Jupiter line, my Jupiter moon. But my values don't align with those places.
Mhm.
The practicalities don't line up. I don't like the weather, or I don't really like the place itself, the country, the people, right? So there are those considerations. The other consideration is my husband. My husband has a job opportunity and he's getting his citizenship here in France, and we're waiting for that citizenship to go through. We've been here 7 years preparing for
Wow.
this. So I kind of just have to wait it out. But it's like, yeah, there's a Saturn line, but there's other stuff in the relocation chart that are showing beautiful things. Like there is a faded point on my career in France on that Saturn line. So it's like, yeah, it's slow, but it's faded here. And so, and I also love it. I've got a home line of Venus on the home point here. So there's this energy of like loving a place. And so there's downsides here, but there's also so many upsides. And that's where it's like asking yourself what's important to you, what are your priorities, what are your values, and what are your non-negotiables. I think knowing your non-negotiables before you go into an astrocartography reading is essential because you want to know like this is top priority for me is like this, and then you can find a place accordingly.
Those are great, great points, great advice. And
Ah.
then I know that you said you're launching a program, right? To
Oh
teach
yeah.
astrocartography. So perhaps you can tell a little bit about that so those that are
Yeah.
interested in learning can join your class.
Yes. So I have the relocation astrology course. So you can learn this at any time. It's a deep dive program. So many hours of examples and the basics. So even if you're new to astrology, you're going to get all the basics in the beginning and you'll have the content for life, lifetime access. But on August 20th, I'm launching the certification program. And the certification, it only runs once a year. It's a live program with me, with live classes with me. And it opens for 1 month every year. And so that'll open August 20th
Mhm.
until mid-September. So if you want to get certified, have a thorough test assessment, kind of really be able to do the work and commit yourself for a year to really learn this, that is available. And you can just go to helenawoods.com/courses and you'll find all my offerings there. And I do have a membership that just opened. That's like a monthly program. So if you want, it's not astrocartography related though. So if you specifically want locational astrology, I would recommend the relocation astrology course. And also for any of you listening, you can get my free cheat sheet. So if you go to helenawoods.com/cheat sheet, or it's just in my Instagram bio too, you can get a free cheat sheet where it talks about what all the lines mean and like a basic understanding. So when you pull up your map for the first time on a website like astro.com, Astro
Mhm.
Click Travel, it'll show you your map. And so this free cheat sheet will show you what each line means. You just have to look at the symbol and the letters, and you'll see a little description of what that means. And it's really helpful.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. What a pleasure it's been connecting with you in this amazing space and the wealth of information you share.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for having me
Uh,
on.
Thank you.